using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here into hour number 3. We welcome you to it, our third and final on this Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. We send you into your holiday weekend. It is Memorial Day weekend, and he is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. One more hour to go. A ton of previews around what we will have this weekend in Major League Baseball, starting with this full Friday slate up next in MLB. We often mark Memorial Day each and every Major League Baseball season as an important point on the calendar. Why? Because it's really when a club can be truly evaluated and assessed. Were you bad in your first 50 games? All right, you might be pretty bad the rest of the year. Maybe you're already thinking 2025 and beyond. Did you get off to a slow start, but you're starting to turn things around? It might be time to put your foot down on the gas pedal and get things working, or you were just great and you're hoping to be great, and maybe you'll make some small tinkering moves the rest of this MLB campaign. A lot of that, DRS, here in this third hour. We'll talk Stanley Cup postseason later on in hour number 3, and, of course, preview game number 2 tonight in Minneapolis with some best bets before we go.
Absolutely. It is a big hour number 3. And you're right about this. It is a holiday weekend here. So, me being at the grid for a couple years, you sort of move up the chain a little bit. And I feel comfortable saying this. At 11 a.m., this show will go off the air. I'm giving everybody the rest of the weekend off at the SportsGrid Network. Reconvene back Tuesday morning here. Let's get refreshed. Let's enjoy it. Barbecues, beer, cocktails, cigars, whatever you want. There will be no live programming after 11 a.m. because the people need to recharge their batteries and get ready for the summer. How about that? Sound good? Sounds good.
That's well said, DRS. Now, I know that you have often advocated for yourself to be the commissioner or the head of whatever sports league or governing body is out there. And maybe I haven't always been behind you there as your pollster. But for Donnie Rightside to run the SportsGrid Network, I can get behind that. Everybody done at 11 a.m. Eastern. Actually, DRS, just so you know, to start this third hour, our third and final, I want you to know how this final hour is going to end. Big Blue up and in once again, filling in for our guy, Craig Mish, who, by the way, is not here in our next segment together. So Mike Blewett hosting Newswire live from our New York City studios. I got to step away probably around 10:56. So I'm going to give a best bet. Toss it back to you. Say goodbye and then tidy things up so the mics aren't hot once again, okay?
I mean, I don't have to bring you back on to say goodbye for the weekend. You can't just slip out here side left. So maybe we'll get a better crack at it today. But it's a Friday. Look, the vibes are high for profitability and content here on the SportsGrid Network. Yep.
Very, very high. I just wanted to give you the early notice so you weren't taken aback maybe like last time. All right. We start this third hour hearing from you ahead of this critical weekend in the Major League Baseball calendar. Really in the National League, when you look at the clear tier of three at the top, the Dodgers, Braves, and the best team in the bigs at 37 and 14, the Philadelphia Phillies. Who's going to win the pennant in the National League? That was the question in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, who will win the National League pennant this season? The Dodgers are the favorites. They've been the favorites all year long, well back into the offseason after the acquisition of Shohei Ohtani, even before the acquisition of Ohtani as well. Plus 135 for L.A., short number, plus 260. The price for the Braves, nearly double that of the Dodgers. And now the Phils, who began the year around plus 950, have seen that number shorten and shorten and shorten all season long. Plus 390 for Philadelphia. The Phils have the best record in the bigs, and they have the public love, maybe debunking Donnie's theory that everybody questions how good this Philly team really is. About 46% of the vote going with the Phils to win the National League pennant. Now, maybe I ask the question this way to you, Donnie. Do you think the public truly is in love with Philadelphia, or after you hitting the Riz Twiz and getting your South Jersey and Philly followers involved in these votes, they started to dominate the poll?
Yeah, and also some people out there just like more money than other people, which means the Dodgers plus 135. I'm not tying my money up that. Ooh, the plus 390. Like there's some memes you can put, Ben, right? So if you're saying, all right, let me put this in perspective, it's the Philadelphia Phillies to win the pennant, the Philadelphia Phillies not to win the pennant. There you go.
Look at this guy, man.
Yeah.
Why don't you
Use
splash
those
a
memes,
like
man.
on the tweet once in a while? I engage with your tweets. You got more GIFs than anybody knows how to reply with every pacer you need when Indiana's on the basketball floor. But you can't splash a like on your co-host's funny meme tweet?
I might have to. So maybe it's just they hate. Like I see Ben tweeting, like I'm not liking this. This is nonsense. So hopefully nobody's squeezing there. I mean, I give the guy any respect at this point. So sometimes you get down like that on a Friday.
It would seem, though, DRS, that people are giving the Phils the respect they deserve. And here's the really interesting thing to be fully serious about Philadelphia's outlook to win the pennant this year. The Phils are the only team out of this group of three, not the Braves, not the Dodgers, that in each of the past two seasons has played in the National League Championship Series. The story really has been the same since 2019 for the Braves and the Dodgers, expected to be there at the end of the road. The Dodgers won the World Series in the COVID-shortened season of 2020. The Braves, the World Series champs in 2021. Expected for both to be back basically dueling each other for the pennant each and every year the past two seasons. But neither Atlanta nor L.A. has made it to the NLCS. It's been the Phils each of the past 2 years. The pennant winners in 2022, of course, coming up ever so short against the Diamondbacks, but in the NLCS a season ago. Philly has that better postseason pedigree at least the past 2 years, and now is backing it up with regular season success.
Yes, and also keep in mind about this, too. The question is who will win the National League pennant this season, not who's going to end up the regular season with the most wins and the best record. So then you could say, like, whoa, that changes the game plan. Does it really, though? Look at those three teams. When you're lining up starting, front-end pitching here, the Phillies are better than the Braves and better than the Dodgers. So that's also, you might even say, like, the Phillies, not a great regular season. Sometimes it's all the matter of, number one, who you play, but number two is, what does your pitching look like at the end of the season? Are you throwing a really good game one starter and then piecemealing games 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7 together just to see who's going to be that hot hand? Or are you going to lay out three dominant pitchers to start every single series? That's how you win in the playoffs. Give me the starting pitchers, and the Phillies pitchers are better than the Braves and better than the Dodgers.
Absolutely no doubt about it. Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, as good as you will find for the top two and the aces of staff in a postseason. Ranger Suarez, by the way, has been incredible in the last two playoff runs for the Phils, and he's the best pitcher in Major League Baseball at this moment. 9-0 with a 1.36 ERA. That a historical best start in 60 years in Major League Baseball, virtually. And Donnie, you're right. This is not who has the most regular season wins after 162 at the end of September here in MLB, but that will factor in. And the Phillies do have the advantage right now, because if the Phils end up with the most wins in the National League and they are the 1 seed, yes, the 6 teams that make the Major League Baseball postseason out of either league, anything can happen, as we have seen. But just on paper, being the 1 seed, having the advantage, getting that bye, that is a net positive, at least on paper. And the Phils are on track, at least ahead of the Dodgers and the Braves as of this moment, of doing just that.
Yes, certainly. And that's where you're going to narrow it down to. Now, granted, the Philadelphia Phillies, you need that pitching staff to stay healthy. The Braves, I always say, have the best front office in the major leagues. They'll improve their baseball team. The Dodgers have endless prospects and endless money. They will make moves at the deadline. But it does feel like the poll got it correctly. The price point for the Phillies and how they're playing right now makes some sense for 46% of those votes. The other replies at 7%, which is the bottom of the barrel. I agree with that too, because we talk about that top level shelf here. It's the Dodgers, Braves, and the Phillies. It was for me day number 1, and here, as we sit here getting close to June, it's still the same 3. And by the time we talk about this over the summer, it's going to be the same 3 as well here. So the National League coming down to those 3 teams, no question.
One reply, though, from Joe Friezo, whoever that is. Dodgers, obviously, ... Phillies don't play any good teams? More around Major League Baseball next.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Late night in San Diego. It's the Padres and the Yankees. New York bouncing back to split a 4-game series in the midweek with Seattle. So the Yankees now have won 9 of their last 11 games as they make the long trip to San Diego. The Pinstripes booked as a slight road favorite, -116, with Carlos Rodon on the bump. The over-under, 7.5. Yu Darvish was sensational in his last start, -102 on the money line for the Padres. DRS, full cross-country trip for the Yanks, who played, albeit a day baseball game, but a game yesterday, no off day in between, will that have an effect on this outcome tonight in San Diego?
I don't know if I have an effect overall just the way we put it there, but if we just take a look at the lineups here, one lineup coming in absolutely red hot in the Yankees. The other lineup here for the San Diego Padres against left-handed pitching, absolutely ice cold. So you're starting right there. But let's take a look at the pitching matchups and where that makes sense. Yu Darvish, as you pointed out, sensational. You want to take a look at the last 30 days? Fantastic. You want to take a look at the full season? Fantastic. But also, right-handed pitching, the Yankees, Ben, have absolutely feasted on that. Look at the top 6 guys in this lineup, which I love for the New York Yankees, typically on a night-to-night basis. Volpe, Soto, Judge, Verdugo, Stanton, and Rizzo. ISO power numbers here, 198, 325. Aaron Judge, 417, 230, 243, and 225, respectively, over the last 30 days. The Yankees are it. But then again, we just told you how good Yu Darvish has been. We're also not playing in the Bronx, which means like, oh, look at this. Maybe 80-degree temperatures on the East Coast, little humidity baked in, maybe a wind blowing out in the True Hitters ballpark. You're playing out there at Petco, and that is not a great ballpark to hit at. And tonight's temperatures, 63 degrees with a wind that is blowing in. If we flip it over to San Diego at the plate, they haven't hit left-handed pitching all that well. However, Carlos Rodon has struggled with right-handed batters over the past month. The problem is everybody in that lineup has been struggling against lefties here. The only bright spot, Jurickson Profar, the 273 ISO power number through 35 at-bats against left-handed pitching. That's your RBI look. But if you hear what I'm saying to you tonight, it's probably an under game.
Listen, Yu Darvish has been incredible. He has won his last 4 starts. He is 4-1 this year with a 2.08 ERA. His last 4 starts, he has not allowed a single earned run. Not a single earned run in 24 innings of work. In fact, the Padres have won the game overall in his last 6 starts. I find it slightly intriguing. San Diego is the underdog. Now we go to the Trop, where the Rays on a 4-game skid. The Royals, red hot. KC has won 6 straight with a day off, entering today in Tampa. And the Royals with Seth Lugo, who has also been great for Kansas City this year, a slight road favorite. What do you make of the matchup today in the Trop?
By the way, Seth Lugo is the better pitcher on the mound, and quite frankly, you hit that there. 258 batters he's faced on the season, a 137 ISO, and a weighted on-base percentage of 269. He's been even better over the past 30 days. And when you take a look at that Tampa Bay Rays lineup, which over the past couple of years has been quality against right-handed pitching for the past 30 days, they've been an absolute disaster. So you do get a little bit of a thumb up here for the Kansas City Royals on that edge. But let's take a look at Sean Armstrong, due to be on the mound today for Tampa. You look at his last 30 days, it's been abysmal against left-handed batters, people. When you're talking about the Kansas City Royals, it's a couple of left-handed batters that we typically like. However, let's take a set aside our fandom for the Pasquatch, Vinny Pasquantino. Over the last 30 days, 81 at-bats against right-handed pitching hasn't been all that good. A 118 ISO and a 263 weighted on-base percentage. But you know the other left-handed batter I love in that lineup? It's Michael Massey. 70 at-bats. How about this? A 239 ISO and a weighted on-base percentage of 368. He will definitely make my card for an RBI opportunity. But sometimes we talk about just the opportunity with players on base. If you look at Vinny P, we don't actually need a base hit to get an RBI. Why? Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt. 336, 383 weighted on base percentages. Those guys should be on the pond by the time Vinny P gets up. So maybe an opportunity, but my best one, it's Michael Massey. And quite frankly, I would just lay it with the Kansas City Royals tonight. They're the better ball club.
We're just Royals guys. It really is what it is. KC this year, 32 victories, 32-19. It took them till the end of July to win 30 games last year on a torrid pace. But still a game and a half behind Cleveland for that top spot in the American League Central, despite the Royals winning 6 in a row, because the Guardians have also won 6 in a row. Cleveland a slight favorite tonight in Anaheim, where Donnie thinks I grew up, against the Angels, minus 110 for Cleveland. Will it be 7 straight tonight for the Guardians?
Orange County Ben, that's the new moniker around these parts here. Let's take a look at the Los Angeles Angels starting pitcher Patrick Sandoval, the lefty on the mound. He's been really good, man. 225 batters he's faced on the season, an ISO of 0.99 combined, and a weighted on base percentage right around average at 321. But in the past 30 days, unhittable, it feels like, Ben. 122 batters facing 0.87 ISO and a 285 weighted on base percentage. That is absolutely fantastic. And take a look at that Guardians lineup. Not all that great here against left-handed pitchers. If there was one guy you picked out that has done very well, it's David Fry with a 550 ISO through 27 at-bats against left-handed pitching. But as I said, this guy, Sandoval, has been really, really good. Flip it over to the other side with chances for maybe RBIs. Logan Allen hasn't been that great. elevated numbers on ISO power numbers around 170, which is average, but the weighted on base percentage is 367 through 108 batters he's faced if we combine left-handed and right-handed batters. If we're looking at the lineup tonight, the leadoff batter, Chenot, 278. You take a look at Pilar, 350. Take a look at Adele, 591. Those guys probably should be in your lineup tonight. And I think Nolan Shanuel, I believe, is the correct pronunciation on this one. I bet him a couple times. I haven't watched him live to get that, response from the PA announcer, but that guy should be on your roster tonight.
Yeah, absolutely so. The pronunciation guide will follow. Tonight in Oakland, the Astros head to take on the what is it?
Shanuel. I'm learning it on the fly here as we go.
Shanuel. Well done. Well done. Houston tonight in Oakland, by the way. It's the Stros versus the A's. Mm-hmm. The Astros have won 8 of their last 10, but they did lose their midweek series 2 of 3 against those Halos. But Houston, a hefty road favorite tonight in Oakland. Justin Verlander on the bump. Will the Astros get a victory?
Yeah, the Astros should be in a good spot tonight. And again, you've seen 15 miles an hour blowing out in Oakland. That's every night, people. Don't get excited like, wow, the wind's really blowing out the center field. It's just what it does there. Cooler temperatures each and every night as well. Take a look at Ross Stripling on the mound. He has struggled a bit with left-handed batters with weighted on base percentage. There's no better left-handed batter in Major League Baseball right now than Kyle Tucker. This is what you're supposed to have after 10 at-bats. He's got 76 at-bats over the last month here against right-handed pitching. 559 ISO power number. He is a must, Ben, in your lineup tonight for an RBI.
I've got an important update about Nolan Shanuel next.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
this
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
So we have the official pronunciation of the Angels player Nolan Shanuel. Shanuel. I appreciate you trying to give a little bit of flavor to it, Shanuel, but just Shanuel for your guy. What did you like tonight? RBI prompt in that game for the Halos?
Yeah, a couple RBI guys there, man.
Okay.
Like it's going to be Manuel. There you go.
I like that. I mean, listen, not the worst idea in the world. All right, now we keep it rolling. NL Central duel this weekend under the arch in St. Louis. The Redbirds playing pretty good right now. The Cubbies just lost their midweek set in the rubber match yesterday at home against the Braves. But if you need to win a game, Shota Imanaga is your guy. The Cubbies and Imanaga, a road favorite in the Lou today, minus 142. What can we expect out of Imanaga tonight against St. Louis?
Yeah, if I could activate my, little roadcaster right here to have that soundboard up, we'd be having the alerts going off left and right. Why? You might get a no-hitter tonight. How about that of the Shota Imanaga? He's been that dominant on the season. 209 batters faced, an .055 ISO, and a weighted on-base percentage of .221. How about the walk ratio against lefties? He's faced 47 of them this year. Hasn't walked a single one of those, yet striking out 28% of those batters. He's been phenomenal. Now, you say to yourself, okay, takes a pitcher and takes a lineup here to match up. The lineup today, Nootbaar, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Herrera, Carlson, Donovan, Pages, and Ciani. All are absolutely horrendous against left-handed pitching. Take a look at these ISO power numbers: 094, 037, 038, 056, 0, 086, 0, and 143. The only bright spot is Mason Wynn at the leadoff spot at a 265. If he gets behind Mr. Wynn, it should be smooth sailing tonight. Now let's flip it over to the Chicago side and say, well, it takes two to tango, which means my guy can throw a no-hitter, but we got to be able to score some runs. Should be able to do that against Miles Michaelis today. Struggling against lefties, struggling against righties. A decent top four: Tauchman, Suzuki, Bellinger, and Morel. They should all get base hits with legitimate RBI opportunities. This should be a runaway victory for the Chicago Cubs tonight. It's a great matchup for them.
It's a pretty good price on the money line as well, minus 142. Imanaga this year, 5-0 with a 0.84 ERA. 5-0 with a 0.84 ERA. That, of course, is the best in Major League Baseball. He has also started 9 games for Chicago. They're 8-1 straight up in those 9. And you're not paying that hefty of a tax on that minus 142 number. Love that look tonight in St. Louis. The Reds at the bottom of the National League Central. And today in Cincy, the Reds are hosting the Dodgers. LA, a minus 158 favorite, total at 9.5. What do you like tonight in the Great American Ballpark?
Sooner than later, James Paxton is going to get hit around. He's playing with a little bit of fire. Take a look at the analytical numbers. XFIP minus on the card today, Ben. If we take a look at pitchers over the first 60 days of Major League Baseball season with at least 20 innings pitched, he's 27th out of 27 on the card today, but has one of the better ERAs at 2.84. It doesn't make sense. It just means he's getting lucky, which you don't strike out enough batters and you walk too many people, but you still do have to have an offense that's going to be able to capitalize on that. And I don't know if we get that out of the Reds today. Tyler Stevenson in the middle of that lineup. Stuart Fairchild is going to bat right around 7th. The only positive batters I see in the lineup against left-handed pitching, at least over the past 30 days. Then we flip it over to the Dodgers and say, if I could just get a competent effort here out of Paxton, which he has been, non-analytical numbers, Graham Ashcraft should be able to get hit from the left-hand side. And when you talk about left-handed batters over the past 30 days, you got 2 of the best of them right here sitting on the Dodgers. That's Shohei Ohtani, 75 at-bats with a 303 ISO power number. Freddie Freeman, 74 at-bats with a 262 weighted on-base percentage. The Dodgers should win this game, but I am waiting for the bottom to fall out on James Paxton, which hasn't happened yet. Maybe it does tonight. It just doesn't look great from a Reds perspective. That's all.
Cutter Crawford has been great for the Red Sox. Boston at home in Fenway hosting the Brewers. Minus 138 on the money line in favor of Boston. Total at 9.5. I like Cutter Crawford. He's been great this year. And the Red Sox a home money line favorite. What say you, DRS?
Yeah, probably lean a little bit to the Sox tonight. Like that lineup there. Duran's been great. Abreu's been great. Devers has been great. That should be enough to lead him. And also keep in mind, 75 degrees tonight in Boston with the wind blowing out to right field at 9 miles an hour. Advantage to left-handed batters. So again, Duran, Abreu, and Devers here. We'll see if they can get down to business. But it does technically, based on the numbers between both the pitchers and the hitters, probably lean more towards an under, but it's a good hitting environment up there at Fenway tonight. No doubt about that.
Got some good weather entering this holiday weekend here around the East Coast. I'll be at Citi Field tomorrow. We'll be cooking up a best bet for the Mets and the Giants. You know, Donnie Rightside will be involved as well. But now we go indoors, actually to the ice. Stanley Cup postseason action. A recap of game number 1 last night in Dallas. Why can't the Stars win the opening game of a series at home? Donnie Draisaitl, but also Anna Dua, will tell you up next here on the Early Line.
using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Stanley Cup postseason action on the ice as the conference finals round has begun. Last night it was game number 1 in Dallas between the Stars and the Oilers. Tonight inside Madison Square Garden, it is game number 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Rangers and the Panthers. To help us make sense of it all, Anna Dua from the NHL joins us live right here on this Friday on the early line. Anna, thank you as always for taking the time to be here on this Friday.
Thanks for having me.
Game number 1 last night, Anna, in Dallas. The Stars, in their now 3 series in this Stanley Cup postseason run, have had home ice advantage to start a series and refuse to win a game at home. Last night, though, a tough test into double overtime. Edmonton wins 3-2 just about a half minute into that second OT session. Connor McDavid nets the game winner for the Oilers as Edmonton wins game 1 as a slight road underdog 3-2. Anna, what was your main takeaway from the opening game of the Western Conference Finals?
Edmonton really impressed me the way they were able to rally because, to be honest, I was doubting them a little bit after their series against the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks were a battered team. They didn't have Thatcher Demko. They lost Brock Besser towards the end of that series, and Edmonton barely got out of that. I thought they should have had a little bit more of a dominant performance, whereas Dallas, I thought, looked really good heading into the Western Conference Final. But yesterday, Edmonton managed to stick around. Dallas had a great start to the game, and Edmonton found their way back. So that's just one of those situations where I feel like the Oilers really showcased that they are a team that could be a Stanley Cup contender, and it was close, guys. Honestly, I know the score sheet doesn't reflect it, but Dallas had a lot of great looks, and Stuart Skinner made a lot of great saves.
Yeah, that's always the interesting part with Edmonton for me is you take a look at the goaltending situation. If you can get quality goaltending, they are a really tough team. And as we move forward in the series, you see it in the pricing. Edmonton wrestles back home ice advantage at now a minus 200 price. Moving forward in the season, is there any panic in Dallas? As Ben pointed out, they're used to being in this spot.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more panic in terms of the Eastern Conference Final with the Rangers dropping their first game, whereas Dallas just can't win to start off a series, but that means they're a great comeback team for sure. I think a lot of people were down and out on them in Vegas, and Dallas found a way to rally there, so I wouldn't be too worried. The one big thing, though, is in the Stanley Cup playoffs, losing a double OT game is really hard to come back from because everyone's tired. They've had a long season. They played so much hockey to get to this point. You don't want to unnecessarily play that much extra hockey and then end up not even getting a win there.
Yeah, it is really disappointing for Dallas. But to Anna's point, they dropped the first two games of their opening round series at home to the Vegas Golden Knights and responded with two victories in Vegas. So they're comfortable, but not in the best position, now being down 0-1 after losing game one at home. So, Anna, when you look at the Western Conference Finals overall, does Edmonton taking game one on the road change your outlook for the series overall?
I had Dallas in 6 heading into this series. I think this series definitely goes 6 or 7. I really do think after that game, it can kind of go either way. As I said earlier, like the big question mark for me with Edmonton was Stuart Skinner. I thought Jake Onger was the significantly better goalie in this matchup. And yesterday, Stuart Skinner was a big reason why the Edmonton Oilers were able to come out here with a win. Like Dallas allowed 2 goals. It didn't they let Dallas score 2 goals and it didn't rattle him that much. But in that OT period, the Stars had a lot of good looks. Connor McDavid took a double minor to kick things off, and Edmonton being able to kill that off and Stuart Skinner holding down the fort, that was my biggest question mark. He kind of proved himself there. Probably the best game I've seen him play, and the confidence he's going to have for the rest of the series. Maybe Edmonton actually comes out, so I might be changing my prediction just a tad.
Let's take a look at those Canadian teams in the NHL, 3 of which missed the playoffs. The Montreal Canadiens, the Ottawa Senators, and the Calgary Flames. The Maple Leafs lost in round 1 along with the Winnipeg Jets. Round number 2, it was the Canucks. So still left now with the 1-0 lead in the Western Conference Finals is the Edmonton Oilers. We haven't seen a Canadian team win a Stanley Cup since Patrick Roy and the Montreal Canadiens. Could this be the year, Anna, that we see a Canadian team lift the Stanley Cup?
I mean, I don't want to jinx it. I've never seen the Canadian team win the Stanley Cup in my lifetime, so it would be great to see the Cup come back north of the border, but Edmonton's been having the storyline for the last couple of seasons. I truly think any of the 4 teams left could seriously win the Stanley Cup. This year, we're seeing 4 very, very strong teams left standing in the NHL. Florida had a great start against New York, but we know that the Rangers can really rack up those goals and come back into the series in Game 2. Edmonton proved themselves in Game 1, but once again, that was a double OT win against Dallas. Could have gone either way, so Dallas is right up there too. I really can't say, like, truly you can make a case for any of these 4 teams. It's hard to even pick a favorite.
Anna, as a native of the Great White North, as a native of Toronto, are you rooting for Edmonton, Canada's last chance to win Lord Stanley's Cup?
Oh, man, I keep getting this question. We're doing a conference finals show right now for the NHL, which airs during every single game of the conference finals. And I swear to God, I was asked this 4 different times last night during this Edmonton-Dallas game. A lot of people disagree with me. This is just my take. I root for any Canadian team, and a lot of people in Toronto are going to be really angry that I said that. But, you know, I want Cup come back to Canada. I want to see it just up north of the border. And also I root for a lot of Canadian players. Connor McDavid is from very, very close to me, so I'm rooting for him as well. So I take a look at where all those guys are from the roster because that's where the Cup's spending time in the summer.
There you go, Anna. We apologize for Ben asking boring questions that you keep getting asked. I won't do that. So let's focus on the game tonight. It's Florida and New York. Bobrovsky, Shesterkin. Game number 1, we saw a 3-0 win by the Florida Panthers to take the series 1-0 lead. Tonight, we're looking at roughly a pick'em in Madison Square Garden. An exciting game on tap. What are we looking at tonight from your perspective, Anna?
This is going to be the biggest test for the New York Rangers by far, just because this is a team that hasn't trailed this entire postseason. They're used to having a pretty comfortable lead in series, and they're going to have to play behind for the first time in their entire lives. And in Game 1, Florida just like having that 3-0 win. Igor Shesterkin's been the rock that has helped the Rangers get to the point where they're at right now. So just like being at the position that New York is in, I wonder how they're going to respond. You wonder if they're going to have some lineup changes. I know there's a lot of talk in New York about whether Matt Rempe is going to slide back into the lineup given how physical the Florida Panthers play. You definitely noticed that it was a bit lopsided in Game 1 on that end, but this is make it or break it for New York. If New York goes down 2-0 in this series, I don't see them coming back, so this is a big one for them.
A must-win, can't-lose type of feel tonight in the Garden inside MSG. In Game 1, both teams were an even pick-em on the money line, -110 on both sides. The Panthers a slight favorite as of right now for Game number 2. But in the series outright price, Anna, Florida's greater than a $3 favorite at -310 after stealing Game 1 in the Garden with that 3-0 shutout of New York. Do you agree that Florida should be such a strong favorite to win the Eastern Conference crown?
Florida was a favorite heading into this series too, which I thought was so interesting. And it's because New York has been the underdog against Carolina. They're the underdog against Florida. They won the President's Trophy, guys. So they are a very good team. They had a phenomenal regular season. And I feel like a lot of folks are forgetting that. But Florida just plays better against New York than even a Carolina does. And we saw that in Game 1. I just don't know if New York is going to have enough to come back and play the Rangers hockey that they've been playing this entire postseason after dropping such a big game on home ice at MSG. So I get where those odds are coming from. But if there is ever a time to look at the New York Rangers as a futures in the series, it would be right now, because if they come back in Game 2,
hefty underdog at the moment, the Rangers plus 245. Anna, in the final minute of this segment, Connor McDavid, now the favorite to win the Conn Smythe. That's the playoff MVP in the Stanley Cup postseason after last night's double OT game winner at plus 430. Any other names to know outside of the guy that grew up not too far away from you, Connor McDavid?
Well, Edmonton, honestly, I know that Connor McDavid seems like he's going to be the guy, but that's the one good thing about the NHL compared to any other sports league is you're not just going to give that trophy to the highest, flashiest player on each team. Jonathan Marchessault won it last year for the Vegas Golden Knights instead of a guy like Jack Eichel. And Edmonton, Zach Hyman has to be in consideration right now, guys. He leads the NHL in postseason goals. He scored again in that first game against Dallas, and he's scoring pretty much every night. Leon Draisaitl, I know you're really happy about that and that name, but that's another one.
There he is. Donnie's brother. That's Donnie Draisaitl. More on the early line up next.
Using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Game number 2 of the Western Conference Finals tonight in Minneapolis between the Timberwolves and the Mavericks. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. Heading into a Friday night with a second game of the Western Conference Finals ahead of a holiday weekend, who could you better ask for than the two premier NBA handicappers on this SportsGrid network? Ben and Donnie here for you for game number 2 of the WCF. And Donnie, let's start with the spread itself. Game number 1. The Timberwolves a 4.5-point favorite, which was actually the largest number in favor of the T-Wolves at home in any of their 6 home playoff games so far this postseason. The Mavs win outright, 108-105 as an underdog. Dallas as a dog this postseason, 4-1, both straight up, and then, of course, against the spread. But now in game number 2, despite the Mavericks winning game number 1, the Timberwolves a stronger favorite. It's a 5.5-point number in favor of Minnesota at home. How come?
I just think you're taking a look here at Minnesota being the better basketball team and you're expecting them to bounce back. You can't afford to go down 0-2 on your home court and then go in and say, well, let's handle our business 2 times in Dallas just to get back to Minnesota on a 2-2 even playing field. That can't happen. And also, if we're taking a look at the betting splits here at FanDuel, this is an interesting split that we have. Much like we talked about yesterday, where the betting public's like, wait a second, Dallas won game number 1. Now they're getting 5.5. I'll take that. You had that same feeling with the Pacers. Hey, I got 10 points and I'm getting roughly 9. I'll sign up for that again. And it was a heavy public favorite. It's not so much a heavy public favorite in this one, but take a look at this. 58% of the bets coming in on the spread are coming in for Dallas. So 58 tickets out of 100. But how about this? The percentage of the money coming in is actually 69% on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So more money is actually coming in on the Timberwolves despite more bets coming in on Dallas. So maybe some of that sharp money pushing it around a little bit. And as we talked about the opening number after we saw game number 1, Ben, it was 4.5 right away, which has since moved to 5.5 because that money is starting to push it around. And I do agree with that movement here. I have Minnesota winning the basketball game tonight. And certainly, if I think they win, it's going to be worth more than 5.5 points. So they'll win by margin. That's the way I'm going here.
It is a very interesting distinction you bring up, DRS. 58% of the overall volume of bets on the Mavericks. You could think of that as the public love for a Dallas team that has already won a game on the road in the WCF. But the money is what is moving the market. Now 5.5 in favor of Minnesota. Again, that would be the largest spread in favor of the Timberwolves throughout this postseason. Minnesota has only been booked as a favorite in Minnesota at home. This is the largest number. They are 3-3, both straight up and against the number, meaning every time they win at home, they also cover that spread. It's now at 5.5. Total up by a point to 207 and a hook. I'm fascinated by this over-under. Up by a point from game number 1, 108-105. It went over 206.5. All 4 victories for the Timberwolves in their second round set against the reigning champs in the Nuggets. Total stayed under. Do you think if you have the Timberwolves winning tonight and covering a 5.5-point spread, we go under 207.5?
It probably should, which means you're expecting a pretty good defensive output for the Timberwolves. Also keep in mind, though, I mean, Dallas Mavericks are a very good offensive team. Like, Luka Doncic doesn't care how good your defense is. He's going to get his 25-plus points. You can certainly set your clock by that. And also, as you pointed out so many times, we're not talking about a regular season 233.5 should this game stay under the total. It's 207.5, which means both of these talented offenses, you would hope that at least one of those teams is going to be below 100 points, which technically usually is hard to do. So if I'm looking at a total itself, it's hard to take the under, but the correlation, as we know, is there. The better defensive team is Minnesota. If this game is played where both teams are below 100, you're probably going to tip your cap to the Minnesota Timberwolves. If this game has a more of up-tempo flow, then it probably leans more towards the Dallas Mavericks. So 5.5 there probably correlates with the under. One of those, 107, 100 type finals, which is if you hit the nail on the head.
Right, that's really the nail on the head. And to Donnie's point, that wouldn't be a ton of margin of error. You don't need a high-scoring offensive affair to push us over 207 and a hook. Again, 206.5 was the lowest over-under the Mavericks had seen in any of their 13 playoff games in game number 1. So there's a couple of ways that you could point a path to victory for Minnesota. The Timberwolves cover as a 5.5-point favorite because one of the best defensive teams has a better defensive output than they did in game number 1. Total stays under. Now we go to the prop component of it all. If Minnesota is going to win in even the Western Conference Series at 1 game apiece tonight, DRS, and maybe even cover as a 5.5-point favorite, how many points does Anthony Edwards need to score?
Yeah, he's got to get into the 30s tonight. I mean, that's my marking point. So obviously, if you say, well, I like his over 30, you're going to cash in his points prop, which is 27.5. And immediately, you heard me say this after game number 1, I'm looking forward to Anthony Edwards playing tonight. Not especially happy with how he played in game 7 and game number 1. And keep in mind, 2 high leverage situations for a young player that hasn't been in those environments. But the team still won that game number 7. They lost game number 1. I expect a much more efficient effort and still look for him to shoot at least 20 times tonight. Just cut down on the 3-point shots, get to the free throw a little bit more, and get more aggressive, which could lead to foul trouble for the Dallas Mavericks and easier open looks for guys like Karl Anthony Towns from 3-point range. Drive to the basket, kick out, wide open 3. That usually helps here. So I think Anthony Edwards, 30 points is the number I'm looking for him to hit tonight. And if he does that, I do think that's a victory for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
So 27.5 is his points prop to go over, and then to get to 30 plus is plus 125, a little bit of plus money. If he's over 27.5, he needs one more bucket to get to 30 with plus money on the other side. Karl Anthony Towns was also not great in game number 1. That's your silver lining for the Timberwolves. Your 2 superstars combined to go 12 of 32 from the floor. That's 37.5%, and you lost by 3. The leading scorer for Minnesota, Jaden McDaniels, who has scored 21-plus in 3 straight for the Timberwolves. His points prop tonight is at 11 and a hook, maybe now up to 12.5. Yeah, 12.5 is that updated number on the FanDuel Sportsbook as I see it. He's gone over that in 3 straight. He hit 6 threes in game number 1. He's gone over 12.5 in 5 of the 12 playoff games Minnesota has played. In 4 of the 5, he has made at least 2 threes. I would look at 2+ made threes for Jaden McDaniels tonight. A couple of prop outlooks, of course, for the Mavericks, highlighted by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Then I'll give you a best bet before I go, and Donnie Rightside will take over to close us out. It's like Listen Up reincarnate. Up next, live right here on this Friday on the Early Line.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The Early Line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Friday on the early line. One more segment together, but for me, it's just a few more minutes as Big Blue Mike Blewett steps up and in on Newswire live from our New York City studios. That means Donnie Rightside will close out the show. So, DRS, let's quickly look at the Mavericks props for tonight. Luka Doncic, 29.5 is his points prop. He scored 33 in game number 1. 23 in a hook is the number for Kyrie Irving. He hit the 30-point benchmark for the first time in this postseason run for Dallas in game number 1. Are you expecting either of those two guys to go over their number once again?
Here's the good part about the early parts of a series, Ben. You're still trying to feel the other team out. What's the one thing that the Minnesota Timberwolves, after game number 1, have said to themselves, probably in the defensive locker room here at this point, saying, you know what? We can't let both of these superstars go off. We got to take one of those players away. Now, that's easier said than done. Hey, let's stop Luka. Oh, good luck with that. Hey, let's stop Kyrie. Same thing. But I look at those secondary players, which you take a look at P.J. Washington, who has had some pretty good playoff games. The past couple have been a little bit down. So if I'm the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm saying Kyrie's not getting off like he did here. And certainly Luka Doncic, we're going to try to slow down, which leaves, yes, here's the best opportunity to win. Role players on away teams' home courts, you are going to try to fade those guys. I'm not going to do that today because I think more shots will be available from three-point range for the Dallas Mavericks. That's the way I would go. But for me, I'm actually going to stay away from Luka Doncic and also stay away from Kyrie Irving because I said again, I think they lose this basketball game, and Anthony Edwards on the opposite side, certainly at that 27.5 points, makes a lot of sense. But I would look at secondary value options for for Dallas after game number 1 with the adjustments from the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Just to make this final point, Kyrie's points prop entering game 1 was 20.5. It's now up by 3. If you want a silver lining for Dallas offensively, just 6 of 25 in game number 1 from 3, 24%. All right, DRS, I'm going to give you 2 best bets for this Friday. Then you close it out. I start with the NBA as we were looking at game number 2. I think Karl Anthony Towns also has a better game. Over 2.5 made threes at plus 104 with a little bit of plus money does intrigue me tonight against Dallas. And then a game we discussed earlier under the arch in Major League Baseball. Shota Imanaga on the bump for the Cubs, and they're only a minus 142 road money line favorite. Give me the Cubbies on that money line price. They're 8-1 in the 9 starts that Imanaga has made this year. That's it for me, Donnie. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. I'll talk to you on Tuesday.
All right, get out of here. There's no need to have you on the air anymore. Let me take center stage. Let me enjoy all the spotlight right now and have some fun so we can close out the show. Best bets here. We've been on a pretty hot run, both Ben and myself. And to end it, as Friday is payday, that's what we want to do. I'm going to head out here to Oakland. My best bet is not going to be on a left-handed batter named Kyle Tucker, which it probably should be. He's been absolutely electric. I'm going to raise the price points here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And we're going to take a look at another left-handed batter in that lineup. That's John Singleton. Through 65 at-bats over the past 30 days against right-handed pitching. He's got a 231 ISO power number and a 380 weighted on base percentage. Ross Stripling has struggled with left-handed batters this season to the tune of a 366 weighted on base percentage. If we just accelerate that to the past 30 days, that's a 404 weighted on base percentage against left-handed batters. Singleton at a plus 175 price should be able to cash in a ticket for us. Hopefully we can cash that in. Friday's payday and we move on. But I got another little hot topic to talk about. No, it's not Title IX in college sports here and how that affects them. I always talk about treating your players with respect in the professional ranks to get them to perform. If anybody noticed here, Max Crosby of the Raiders got a $6 million rework of his contract. Why? Because he's a dominant football player. You don't want to give him a brand new contract, but sort of push that money up front to keep him happy before down the line eventually, you're going to have to give him another monster extension. The reason I bring that up is always the Cincinnati Bengals are in my crosshairs for what makes sense and what doesn't make sense here. Keep your players happy. We understand that they paid Joe Burrow a ridiculous amount of money, but that's what the quarterbacks and the going market rates go. But T. Higgins, who's been a very good teammate over the past couple years in Cincinnati and has provided number one like statistics, particularly when Jamar Chase has been down. T. Higgins is looking for his payday here. They slapped the tag on him, which again is north of $20 million. Don't look at it from a commonality standpoint of, boy, that's a lot of money. He should be happy. Not in the landscape of the professional ranks of what you're getting paid at the wide receiver position. So the reason I bring that up, there's a right way to treat your players like Max Crosby to keep them happy here, and there's a wrong way to treat your players players like T. Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals. He should have been paid a long time ago, and I assume they're probably going to play hardball, which will cause bad feelings throughout the regular season, and then who knows what's going to happen with Jamar Chase on top of that. So there, I said it. Treat those players kindly, and in turn, they will give you maximum effort and performances. That'll do it for today's show here on the early line. Ben Stevens, Donnie Rightside, Joe Frieso behind here calling a great game. Enjoy your holiday weekend. We'll catch back up with you on Tuesday. See you later.